Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kelly Nerick, Senior Director of Products and Services with the Small Business Association of Michigan. The Small Business Association of Michigan is a statewide organization serving businesses with fewer than 500 employees across all industry types. Our tools help our members attract and retain talent, manage employee benefit programs, offer discounts on most things that you're already buying, and help you stay compliant. And our work at the Capitol ensures Michigan is a great place to own and operate a business. We have 5 membership levels, providing a variety of options to best fit your company's needs. If you're not yet a member or you would like to think about upgrading your membership, please feel free to visit our website to learn more, www.sbam.org. Now more than ever, small businesses need to be protected from cyber attacks. Yet many of our members find cyber solutions to be expensive, complicated, and time-consuming. And that's where our approved partner, Senseye, comes into play. Senseye simplifies cybersecurity for you and provides deliverables that identify your cybersecurity vulnerabilities and reduce your risk and ensure that you can recover should an attack occur. SBAM and Senseye host a monthly webinar series that educates you on important topics related to small business cybersecurity. And today's webinar will review and discuss changes in the cyber landscape and the new standards of password hygiene to help keep you protected. Presenting from Senseye today is Raj Patel, Chief Growth Officer. And just to note that this webinar is being recorded and we will post on our website as well as Senseye's website. And we'll send you an email with a link that you can refer to later or forward on to a team member. You are currently muted, but we encourage you to submit any questions through the Q&A feature and we'll answer them as we go along. So with no further ado, I'll hand it over to Raj to get us started.
Thank you, Kelly. Our topic today for the webinar is passwords, the new normal. But we've grown up with passwords, so what is the new normal? It's not new to us, but really the new normal is multi-factor, biometrics, password managers. That is the new normal. And it is creating a little bit confusion with our old norms. So for example, we used to strong passwords, changing them every 60 days, alphanumeric. But when you look at the new normal, multi-factor, biometrics, do we really need to do that? Should we change passwords 90 days if I'm using multi-factor? What is the extra benefit I get? That is what we're going to discuss today. And again, I'm looking forward to everyone to ask questions or even just comments on your experience with passwords, and we'll keep an eye on the Q&A feature and answer those questions or talk about your comments throughout the webinar or at the end of the webinar. So let's go cover the basics first. How do passwords get compromised? Over 90% get compromised by brute force and social engineering. So I'll cover that in a second, but you still need to worry about prying eyes. So think about it at home, think about it in coffee shops. There are prying eyes, but this is something that we should educate our children. Prying eyes, they're more apt to share passwords with their friends. I mean, just think about it when your home Wi-Fi password, is that being shared with everyone? So prying eyes, we should still worry about it. Eavesdropping. So think about you're at a coffee shop, you're at your hotel room, the airport, and we like to get on free Wi-Fi. What if that Wi-Fi is not legit? What if that was a hacker that set it up and everything that is going between your computer and your work systems is being eavesdropped by the hacker? That is very common. So something that you should always make sure that the Wi-Fi you're using is an authorized Wi-Fi. I tend to just use my phone Wi-Fi, and I use my data and use the Wi-Fi that way than trusting a public Wi-Fi. And then simple passwords are easy to guess. I don't think that happens a lot today, but again, if you have simple password, you've seen that in movies all the time, where somebody tries and amazingly in movies, they can guess your password in 3 tries. But I don't think that's something we should worry about. We all have strong passwords. But the ones that are the most common are brute force and social engineering. So what's brute force? A hacker has tools they're called password cracking tools, and those tools will crack a password and have multiple today's technology. And I got a slide on how fast those programs can crack passwords. But that is very common today. Hackers will have a whole list of passwords and they'll start cracking them. And then you have social engineering. That's something that we've all experienced. We get emails, now even text messages, and these fake emails, fake text messages try to get our user ID and passwords. And so that's one that we got to really be careful about. And again, 95% passwords get cracked through brute force or social engineering. So what are the characters strong passwords? Again, this is something we already know, but I wanted to make sure we kind of revisited that. So you have secret, your passwords no one should know. They should be unpredictable. Back in the day, I remember we used to tell people, don't use the color of your car, the name of your pet, because someone can predict that and know some of that information from your social media sites. They need to be unique. I think that's one I do want to emphasize. So make sure your passwords are not the same between your social media accounts and your work and your bank system. You need to keep those separate. Why do you need to keep them separate? Because if one area gets compromised, let's say you're using the same password for Dropbox as your social media accounts. If Dropbox password gets compromised, hackers could use that password now to see if you use the same password at other sites. Again, avoid any personal information like birthdays, phone numbers in your passwords, and then don't use dictionary words. So why shouldn't you use dictionary words? That's what the password cracking tool uses as a way to break into passwords. So that brute force, this is just a table of how the brute force password, how fast they can crack a password. Now think about this. If you have an alphanumeric password, upper lower cases, 12 characters, it takes 24 years for today's software to crack it. My question then is, why are we changing passwords every 90 days? If it takes 24 years to crack your password if you have a strong password. And the simple reason is we are using that password in other areas. We've used it in the past. And if that gets compromised, then the hacker can use the same password. So that is one of the reasons why we change passwords often. And it's because they could be compromised elsewhere. Let's take a quick poll. I'm just curious how often you change passwords. So Reagan, if you could turn the poll on. So here we're asking how often you change your passwords. Is it 30 days? Is it 60 days? 90 days, 180 days, never. And never, I mean, think about Facebook. We're never asked to change passwords. Think about even your internet banking account. How often are you required to change passwords? So that's one that, as we're waiting for the poll results, we're never asked to change passwords on our bank accounts. We should manually go and change it. Put a reminder in our calendars that maybe every 90 days, every 180 days, we should change our passwords. Can we see the results of the poll questions? So our poll today said we have 42% never change their passwords, another 25% 60 days, 90 days, 8, and then 25%, that's 180 days. If you had done this 10 years ago, we'd have seen 90 days is the most common, but we're seeing the shift to 180 and never days, and that's really because of the new normal. So let's talk about the new normal. You could okay, so what is the new normal? And really 3 things are impacting the new normal: multi-factor, biometrics, and password managers. And let's talk about all 3. So let's talk about multi-factor first. So multi-factor is using multiple factors to verify your identity. So the first factor is the passwords. So we all have passwords. So that's the first factor. But now you need a second factor. So think about what you have. What you have is your phone. And on your phone, you could get a text message with a code. So the first factor is what you know, which is your password. Your second factor is what you have, which is your phone to get a code or an email to get a code. That is the most common way today where we get multi-factor is it's an app on the phone. It's a text message on the phone. It could be an email with the code we're getting. The other way is biometrics. So we have your password and then it uses to scan your eyes, do your fingerprint. If you've noticed on phones today, iPhones, you don't even need multi-factor. You just need the one. You need the biometrics. Because if you have biometrics, you don't need the second factor. You might also hear two-factor. So two-factor is the most common way for multi-factor. You just need two pieces of information to verify you. So again, multi-factor is a great way to help with compromised passwords. And then the other thing is you'll hear two-factor. It's one and the same thing that we're using today. So going to multi-factor, there's a lot of benefits, multi-factor. One, it adds another layer of defense. So if your password gets compromised somehow, you still want, the hacker will still not be able to gain access to your systems because they need that second layer of defense. If you're using the code, they're not going to get your code unless they have your phone with them and they can access your code. So that second factor is really helpful, the fight against hackers and compromising passwords. It also meets various privacy and security requirements. So if you have to comply with, for example, GLB or HIPAA, a multi-factor is encouraged and helps you meet some of those requirements. It will also help you with cyber insurance. What we hear is cyber insurance rates drop when you're using multi-factor. And if you think about it today, it's a lot easier to implement. Many years ago, multi-factor was not easy. It was difficult to integrate with your current systems. Today, it's easy to implement and it's easy to use. So the adoption rates are very easy today with multi-factor. Let's look at a couple multi-factor companies out there. Again, this is one, I'm not saying Sensei is recommending this. I pulled it up from Expert Insights. So there's a number of companies that provide multi-factor. I do want to talk about three of them. One is Duo Security. And the reason I bring up Duo is out of Ann Arbor. It's a success story when it comes to multi-factor. They recognize this problem and solution early on, and they developed a product. A lot of companies use Duo, not just in Michigan, but all across the United States and across the world. It was a great company. And then other companies kind of jumped ship, and you can see the rest of them. And then finally now, Google and Microsoft have jumped on board too. So if you're using Google, Google has Google Authenticator. The way this works is easy to set up on your systems, and your employees would have to download the Google Authenticator app. And when they log in, the Authenticator app, on the screen, they'll see a code and they have to go in the Authenticator app and verify the same code. And so that works really well. We use it. And then Microsoft has something similar that you have to turn on, and that forces all your employees to have that dual factor. So going again to a poll, we're just curious how many of you require all your employees or contractors to use multi-factor. And I say multi-factor, two factors, the same thing. Let's start the poll. We're seeing as we've helped our clients, we're seeing that MFA is getting very common right now. If you don't have it, many companies are planning to implement it. The solutions are getting more affordable, easier to integrate. And I can see it's quite a good responses. We're going to wait on get a little bit more responses. We've got 66% have participated in the poll. There we go. We got 83% participation. Can we show the results? So with over 80% of you have participated, again, thank you. 60% say yes, you have multi-factor, that's great. 13% do not, 7% on select employees, and 20% are planning to implement. What I would say again is if you don't have multi-factor, I would encourage you all to implement multi-factor. If you can't do it for everyone, do it at least for your privileged accounts. So think about your admin accounts, people that control access to your networks, to your systems. They should be using multi-factor. But the other privileged accounts are also, think about accounts payable, your treasury, or whoever manages your bill payment. They should use multi-factor because there's a risk over there with the financial loss. If somebody clicks something, their password get compromised. Funds will not get moved because you still need multi-factor to do that. Let's go to the next topic, password managers. So what are password managers? It's like a safe for your passwords. So all your passwords are contained in the password manager. The nice thing about this nowadays, it's become very robust. So it provides you secure storage. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would not recommend password managers. I didn't think they were strong enough. But today they do have strong encryption. They are able to secure your passwords. Having said that, LastPass just got compromised. I think it was last month. So again, they're not entirely foolproof, but I think they're better at creating strong passwords, saving strong passwords. And what happens is you get a master password that gives you access to your password manager. And then all your passwords are stored in there. The nice thing about password managers, they can generate passwords for you, so you don't have to remember your passwords. So you could generate a 50-character password using a password manager, and then you don't have to remember it because it will autofill it. And then it allows for multi-device synchronization. So if I can get access to my password if I'm using my phone, if I'm using my desktop at work, if I'm using my laptop at home. That's the other nice thing about password managers is that the manager allows you to use it across multiple platforms. The one thing you got to remember is that master password, that's the keys to your kingdom. You need to keep it very strong. And I get a lot of questions as to, well, how do I remember that strong password for my password manager? And I think it's okay to write it down. If you write it down, maybe keep it in a safe, keep it in a locked drawer, do not share it. Some of you might be saving passwords on your phone. And that might not be a good idea because if your phones get stolen, they could have access to your password. So that's what password managers are. A lot of password managers also now provide two-factor authentication. So when you log in, they'll require you for a second verification. So that's another advantage. So if you don't have multi-factor and using password managers, you could activate the two-factor. They also provide password strength analysis. So if you like to pick your own passwords, you can enter it in there. And it'll tell you how good or bad the password is. Personally, I prefer that the password manager generates a password. That way I don't have to remember it. And I ask my password manager to generate a password for every area I access. So if there's 50 different accounts you're accessing, so think about your social media, your bank accounts, then every other website you go to, you're asking you to log in. Think about this webinar, it asks you to log in. Your password manager could create unique passwords for each of your login access areas. So that's the other great thing. But the last thing also is you got to make sure your emergency access is also configured properly in the settings. So emergency access features allows you that somebody else could access your passwords as a designated contact. So think about many of us have elderly parents and password managers could be great for them, but also you need access to those passwords too. So the emergency access setting is something you might want to look into and make sure it's configured properly. We do have a blog that was written. So if you go to sensei.com and go to a blog section, we have a great blog on password managers and why they benefit you. The other area I want to talk about is these browser-based passwords. So prior to password managers becoming very popular, everyone was using these browser-based passwords. So what that is you go to a website And if you're using Safari on an iPhone, or if you're using a Chrome on a desktop, or any other internet browser, you're given the option of, do you want me to save the password? And many individuals use that. It's not as safe, but it was very convenient, and they were saving passwords that way. The advantages of that was it's built into your browser. You don't have to remember the password. You don't have to install additional software. It's quick and easy to use. The only problem with that is it's not as secure as a password manager. It's often these passwords are stored in unencrypted format. You can check that. You can go to your browser settings and go to your saved password. And you can see all your passwords are saved there. It's got limited functionality, so you couldn't go from a desktop now to your iPhone and then it remembers. Though some of the password browser-based passwords are now enabling multi-device use. But I still prefer password managers over browser-based passwords because, one, it's more secure. It stores your login information for multiple websites and applications. It allows you to generate strong and unique passwords. And that I'll keep emphasizing that use your password manager to generate the passwords. That way you don't have to remember them. You can have 50 different passwords with 50 different sites. It could be used across multiple devices. The disadvantages of password manager are, requires installing additional software, uses a website application. There's some learning curve. And many of these password managers require a subscription or purchase. They're quite affordable though, but they do require. I would encourage more a subscription-based password manager versus a free one. The one that you pay for is going to be stronger, widely used versus the free one. So overall, my recommendation is with a password manager. I would heavily recommend against using browser-based passwords. They might be convenient, but again, they're easy to, your passwords can easily get compromised there. I'm just looking at the Q&A. I don't see any questions. Again, just a reminder, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to make comments on any of the topics that we're talking about today. Looking over what are the best password managers. Again, there's a number of them that I've listed over here. Again, these are from PC Magazine, but number one, Password Keeper is another one. A number of these are good passwords. Bitwarden, that's the one we use, but I've seen a lot of companies use NordPass also. I did take out LastPass just because it got compromised, but up till about a month ago, LastPass was one of the most commonly used password managers and highly recommended. But I guess that's why it got targeted, and it's not on this list today. So if you think about password managers plus multi-factor, to me, that's the best problem of passwords getting compromised. So that to me is great.
Raj, your audio
I think,
cut
yes.
out. Your audio cut out for a second. Can you repeat that, please?
Yes. So what I was saying on this slide is, to me, MFA plus password managers, that's the best way to fight hackers compromising our passwords. It's impossible for a hacker to compromise your password, even with phishing attempts. So think about phishing attempts is the number one problem today when it comes to cybersecurity. And if you have multi-factor authentication, if you're using password managers, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to social engineer our passwords. I think the only place left for passwords to get compromised after these two technologies is really in the movies. I still get amazed how in movies that it's fascinating that they can crack passwords. But I think they'll have a challenge cracking passwords with password managers and multi-factor. So one of the things that we have is, so if I'm using a password manager and I've generated a 50-character password and I'm using multi-factor authentication, how often should I be changing my passwords? So let's go to a poll question again. And while we're waiting for, right now we have 70%. Let's wait to get it to 80% and we can share the results. And then we have a question too that I will talk about too. I need a couple more attendees to answer the poll. Maybe the rest are not sure. Why don't we show the answer, the poll results? So 50% said never, 17 said 180. There's 8% still feel 30 days. And this answer is debatable. So I would agree that changing passwords more often also can create a challenge by itself. But I think never might not be a good answer, just because if you use the same password elsewhere and that gets compromised, then this password's getting compromised. So I think it's still a good option to change your passwords. Probably not 30 or 60 or 90, maybe 180 days is a good compromise. So hopefully that helps you with this poll question. I'm going to go a little bit into also some of the questions. So somebody said, a password manager can still be hacked. There's different ways to do it. So I would say that comment is correct. That password managers can still be compromised. So, and somebody else then talks about, it defeats the purpose of password manager. That is true. And somebody else comments about, should we then use multi-factor? So I think multi-factor is definitely better use than passwords. I would say use the combination of multi-factor and password managers. The only reason I talk about password managers is it allows you to set very strong passwords. It allows you to set very unique passwords, but it is vulnerable. So you should be careful about that. And then somebody talked about AI, and I'm going to talk about that. Somebody else makes a comment that, why force passwords when the change they make is superficial? That is true. But again, what happens is when passwords are on the dark web, the password change kind of helps mitigate the risk from that one. So we got 3 minutes, and I'm going to talk about what's coming up in the future. So the no more password is something that's coming up. I talked to a friend of mine who's a CIO at a beverage distributor company, and what they do for their drivers and their sales force is they actually use a password manager. It forces a password out to their devices, and they don't have to remember passwords. So it is coming. AI is going to be a big factor. So before we talked about the 3 factors, what you have, what you know, but now AI can then figure out how you act. So when you log in, from where you log in, and it might ask you for additional factor if it's not your norm. So that's what's coming up in the future. Is it good? Is it bad? AI, that's debatable. Maybe it's a topic for a different webinar, but that's what's coming up in passwords. I think the AI helps if used properly, but also it can work against you if it knows too much about you, and the hacker could use AI also to kind of push themselves as you. Just one more thing, when we do the webinars at Sensei, we provide the free Sensei score. So what is a Sensei score? Sensei score is like a FICO score. It looks at 38 different data points of your cybersecurity program, and then we evaluate the health of those controls, and we give you a score. It takes about 20 minutes, a call with us. It's a virtual call. And at the end of the 20 minutes, you get your Sensei score. It is a free, no obligation to buy. So we encourage everyone to get their FICO score, Sensei score. It'd be a great way to, where you are. If you're at 600, that's not a good score. If you're 800 above, that's a great score. It is a confidential session, so we don't share that score with anyone. So to schedule your Sensei score, you can scan this QR code and it will take you to a calendar, and you can automatically schedule your call. please take a moment. I would encourage everyone to take the Sensei score. I've done a number of Sensei scores, and one of the benefits you get is things that you didn't know about. It helps you go figure that out and chase the information from your IT manager, your IT vendor. Just a quick thing about Sensei. We help small and medium-sized organizations. Kelly covered that in the beginning. One last poll, and we should be wrapping up this session. So are you interested in getting a free Sensei score? We'll do a quick response to that. Well, we're taking the score again. I thank everyone for the time. Hope you found this webinar useful. One of the things we've tried is a 30-minute webinar versus an hour-long webinar focused on a specific topic. So when you get your survey, hopefully give us some feedback on how the 30-minute went versus an hour-long. I'm not going to plan to share this data, but a number of you would like to have your Sensei score. Some of you are going to think about it. But again, there's no obligation to buy. It's free, and it might be a good education process on yourself too. So last slide. Let me close this out of here. Is key takeaways. Again, strong passwords. You don't need to change them that often, but if you keep them changed, don't reuse them. Use multi-factor. To me, that's the best thing out there today. If you don't have multi-factor, find a way to implement that. Think about multi-factor at home with your children and how you can kind of get them going to use multi-factor. And then password managers. Again, it's a good tool. It allows you to set strong password. It does a better job than us memorizing it, but it is still vulnerable. So I want to thank everyone. We went a couple minutes over, but thank you for staying through the whole session, and hope you found this useful. Take care.